Each number is getting separated by comma operator. Without square brackets, you cannot create the list. Forward indexing as well as backward indexing works same in the list as well as in the string traversing, in the sense I will be visiting each and every item that I have inside the list. Hello everyone, I welcome all of you to the first session on list manipulation. This is the chapter number 11 in your textbook. So this is going to be very important session for all of you. So I'll be teaching how exactly we are dealing with list. So list is one of the data type that we have. So let's start the session without wasting much of your time. So guys, what is that I will be discussing? So I will be discussing some of the important concepts with respect to the list in Python. Along with that, how do we create the list in Python? I will start the session from the scratch, right? And also we will understand the difference between the lists and strings. Along with that, we will also understand accessing an individual elements in the list. How do we access an individual element in the list is what we are trying to understand in this session. Along with that, we will also understand the sum of the operations with list that we can perform. So guys, let's start the session. So what is the first thing that I have? So lists in Python. What exactly lists is all about? So can you tell us from the scratch, from the beginning, sir? Yes, please understand, list is one of the data type that we have. List is one of the data type that we have. Point number one. Point number two. So imagine I am writing a variable A. Imagine I'm writing a variable A. So A is equal to, first of all, if I say the word list, one thing it should come to your mind, that is square brackets. So I will be creating the list with the help of this square brackets. So if I don't write the square brackets, then I will not call that as list at all. So that is the first point that you should understand here. So if I use the square brackets, please understand that I'm going to deal with list. What is the next one that I can understand with respect to list? So guys, whatever I want to store, I can store inside this list. What exactly it means? This is an example for empty list. So this is how I create the empty list. Suppose if I want to create the list for integer, so it looks like this. I have 1, 2, 3. Please observe, I have used comma operator here after each and every number that I have. So what is the meaning of it? So each number is getting separated by comma operator. Suppose if you want to have multiple number of numbers inside the list, so you have to use the comma operator. So this is an example for integers inside the list. So how do I store string inside the list? So I will be writing A is equal to, within quotes, I can just write 1, 2, 3. Guys, please observe what is that I have done here. For each and every string, whatever I have enclosed it with the quotes. I have enclosed it with the quotes, followed by I have the comma. Please understand that. Each and every element, so whatever I have, after that I will be using this comma operator. I'll be using this comma operator. Please understand this, right? So this is an example for string. This is an example for integer. So then how many types of data that I can store inside the list? That is a question that I have. Please understand, I can store multiple data type inside the list. That is an important point that you should make a note of it. What is the meaning of it, sir? Please understand. So I have a list. So A is equal to, can I write something like this? 1, again I will write string. So I have multiple data type inside my string. So guys, it is not mandatory that if you are using the list, so it should consist of only one data type. It can have multiple data type is what you need to understand when we are creating the list. So guys, I can have multiple data items. So whatever I have here, please observe whatever I have here, this is what I will call it as data items. But list will treat this as objects. List will treat this as objects. So whatever the item that you have stored, this will be treated as objects when it comes to the list, is what you need to understand. I can have n number of objects. So it doesn't matter what type of value that you are storing, each and every value will be treated as objects, is what you need to understand, right? So that's what we have given here. So please understand. So list is a standard data type of Python that can store a sequence of values. Please understand, sequence in the sense one by one, which is separated by comma. That is what they are trying to answer with a word, that is sequence, right? So sequence of values belongs to any type. It is not mandatory that you should have that particular data type. It is not mandatory to have homogeneous data type. Homogeneous in the sense one particular data type, right? So that is the meaning of first point. The second point, so the lists are depicted through the square brackets. So guys, whenever you are creating the list, make sure that you have the square brackets. Without square brackets, you cannot create the list. So that is the second important point. You should make a note of it, right? So we have the example, how do we create the empty list, how do we create the integer, which we have already discussed. So the next important point, please observe here, lists are mutable. What is the meaning of mutable, which we have already discussed in the previous sessions? Lists are mutable. So whatever the value that I have here inside the list, I can replace that value with some other value. Suppose if I am able to do that, then I will call that list as mutable. But when it comes to string, it is not mutable. I am not supposed to change, or I am not supposed to replace any of the values that I have in the string. But suppose if I want to replace 1 with 2, so I can do that, right? So that is what I will call it as a mutable. So can list be a part of mutable data type? Yes, of course, list can be under the category of mutable. Along with the list, I have dictionary. Even dictionary is also mutable data type, right? So this is the important point that you should make a note of it, right? So moving on to the next one. So we have already discussed how do we create the list. So you should have the name for the list, right? So L, I have considered it as a name for the list. So it's obviously a variable that all of you should know, right? Then after that, I have the square brackets. So this is how I will be creating the empty list. So I don't have to create the empty list. Suppose if I know the values, directly I can insert the values inside this. For example, L is equal to 1, 2, 3. Please observe, I have string. When it comes to string, I have to enclose it with the quotes. Please don't forget that, right? This is how I will be creating the list. So hope you understand how to create the list, point number 1. So you got the basic knowledge. How do you create the list, right? So moving on to the next concept that I have, creating an empty list. We have already discussed. So guys, so can I write like this? So is it correct syntax? Can you all tell me whether this is syntax, whether the syntax is correct or not? Guys, can anybody tell me, can I write like this? No, I am not supposed to write like this. Okay, so if I write like this, so we will not be creating the list. We will be creating the tuples. What is tuples are? I will be explaining that in the coming session. The syntax is not wrong. The syntax is correct. But I will not be creating the list here. That is what you need to understand. Suppose if I want to create the list, I should write like this. It should be a square brackets, not parenthesis, is what you need to understand, right? So we have the empty list, right? Creating a long list is the next topic. So what exactly it means? Creating a long list, since you will have many elements inside the list, is what we call it as a creating a long list. That's an example that I've taken here. So please understand. So I have a name of the list, then I have a square bracket. So I have more number of numbers I have inside the list. So that's why I will call that as a long list, right? Moving on to the next one that I have. So creating a nested list. What is the meaning of nested list? If you have the list inside the list, so that is what I will call it as a nested list. I will repeat for all of you what exactly the nested list is all about. Please observe. So I have the list. This is one list. So inside this list, I have one more list. So this I will call it as list number 1, right? This is list number 2. So I have the list that is 1. So inside 1 I have 2. So list inside the list is what I will call it as nested list. So that is what you need to understand. That concept is all about the nested list. This is how I will be creating the nested list. So what is the next topic that we have? We have creating a list. So guys, creating a list from the existing sequence. What is the meaning of existing sequence? Remember, so I have hello, right? So can I call this as an existing sequence? I have this already. I have stored it in the variable yes. So hello is a string. It already exists. So can I convert this string into list? Yes, I can convert. This is let us imagine this is an existing sequence. Suppose if I use this statement, what exactly this statement is all about? So please understand, list is a function. List is a function which is a predefined function that I am using. Suppose if I write like this, L is equal to list, right? So L is equal to list. So if I write the sequence hello, okay, if I write the sequence hello, this is an existing sequence. So if I write this and if I print this L, so my output will be what? So my output will looks like this. So H E L L O. So this is what my output will be. So see here, this is the string which is enclosed between the quotes, but this existing sequence is converted into list with the help of the function list is what you need to understand, right? This is how I will be converting the existing sequence, right? Moving on to the next one. Find how do I read the input from the user? How do I read the input from the user and how do I store it inside the list? So that is the question. Next, now we have. So of course, yes, if you write like this, you will be creating the list on your own. Okay. If you write like this, you will be storing the values, right? Whenever you are coding the program. But I don't want like this. I want the user to enter the values for the list. How do we do that, right? So for that, we have the method. Please understand. So observe here. All of you know how to read the values from the user, which we have already discussed in the previous classes, right? So let me just take a variable, okay? How do we read the values from the user? We use input function. What does that we use? We use input function. So fine. So inside this, I'll just write enter the values, okay? I'll just write like this. Enter the values. So fine. It will be in the form of string by default, but I don't want like that. I want to enter the multiple values, right? So how do I enter? How do I enter multiple values, right? For that, guys, how do I store the values in a list? So what do? I will use a function. That is list. So please observe, I will convert this. I am typecasting whatever the value that I have, so into list. So that is what you need to understand. So if I want to convert it into integer, instead of this list, I would have just written int, right? In the same way, I want the list, that's why I'm writing the list. I'm reading the values with the help of input function. Please understand. So with the help of input function, then after that, I'm converting whatever the things that is entered. So I'm converting that into list and then I'm storing it in the L1 is what you need to understand. This is how we read the input from the user and store it in the list, right? So moving on to the next one, list versus strings. How exactly the list is different from the string, right? Let us understand this one by one. So stay tuned, guys. So don't get bored, right? So what is the first function that we have? This we have already studied, right? So what is the first function that we have? We have length. What exactly they will speak about length? How exactly the length function is different, which the length function is different when I'm using strings and list. So is it different or is it same? So what is that? We need to understand. Let's have a check, right? The function length, that is len. So len is a function, predefined function that we were using for the string. So guys, this function returns the number of items in the list. So it remains same for string as well as for the list, right? So what are the next one that we have? Indexing and slicing. So slicing, all of you know, so we are splitting, we are dividing the strings into two parts or two sub parts. So we can also do the same operation to the list. We can also do the same operation to the list. And when it comes to indexing, so indexing also, it remains same like what we have done for the string, it remains same for the list. So please understand, suppose if I have the list, right? So something like this. So how exactly it will look in the memory representation? So guys, this is how it looks. H1, 2, 3. The index is 0, 1, 2. This is forward indexing. This is what I will call it as forward indexing. In the same way, if I have -1, -2, -3, this is what I will call it as backward indexing. Both forward indexing as well as backward indexing works same in the list as well as in the string is what you need to understand. The syntax remains same for slicing for both strings as well as list is what you need to understand. What is the syntax? Can you all recollect? So I have to write the name of the list. So that is L. L is the name of the list that I have here. So the syntax is start. From where exactly I should start? Colon, stop, and I should write colon, step. So that is what you need to understand. The same syntax I will be using to split or to perform the slicing operation for string. Suppose if you have forgotten how exactly to perform strings operation on string, please go back to the previous session and check out what is that we have done, right? So we have the last one, that is membership operator. So guys, membership operator in the sense in and not in. So even in and not in works exactly same like how we are dealing with the strings. There is no change. That is what you need to understand. The next one, we have concatenation and replication operator. So please understand, plus is a concatenation operator. So star is a replicator operator. Please understand, the plus operator adds one list to another list. Please understand, plus operator adds one list to another list at the end of that particular list. So what is the meaning of it? Imagine I have L. So I have 1, 2, 3. So this is my first list. Okay. So imagine I have, this is L1, this is L2. Let's imagine like that. 4, 5, 6. Okay. So I have L3. Suppose if I perform L1 plus, please observe, this is the concatenation operator that I'm using here, right? So if I perform L1 plus L2, can you guess what exactly my L3 will be? Suppose if I print, let's try and print this. If I print L3, my output will look like this. Guys, my output will look like this. This is what you need to understand. It will add the content to the end of the list. So whatever the content that I have in the L2, so that will get added at the end of the content whatever I have in the L1 is what you need to understand. So this is how the concatenation operator is working. In the same way, the replicator operator. So what we had discussed, suppose if I have 3 into HA, guys, 3 times HA will be printed. Same way, if I perform the replicator operator, the content will be repeated that many number of times. For example, I have L1, right? 1, 2, 3. Suppose if I perform replicator operator, so guys, L2 is equal to L1. What is that I can write? So 3, let's imagine like this. So what will happen? So 3 times whatever I have, 1, 2, 3. Suppose if I print this 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 will be printed in the list is what you need to understand. This is a square bracket, right? So that's what you need to understand with respect to the replicator operator, right? So what is the next one? We have accessing the individual elements. How do we access the individual elements? So guys, let's imagine, so this is the list that I have. So how do I access the individual element? With the help of index. The same way what we were doing with the strings, the same thing here we can do it, right? So what is that I can do? So L1 of 0, right? L1 of 0 in the sense, so the first element what I have. So why, sir? Because please observe, the representation of the elements inside the list will happen like this. First element is 1, 2, 3. The index is 0, 1, 2. Suppose if I write, what is the name of this list? So L1. What is the name of this list? L1. So L1 of 0. Please observe, L1 of 0, I have 1. L1 of 0 is 1. If I print L1 of 0, I'll be getting 1, right? So this is how I will be accessing the individual elements. What I have inside the list is what you need to understand, right? Moving on to the next one. So guys, difference between the list and string. Guys, storage. Lists are stored in the memory exactly like a string. How exactly we store the elements in the string? In the same way we store the content of list in the memory, except that because some of their objects are larger objects, they store the reference at each index instead of single character. What is the meaning of it, sir? I explained this in the previous class. In fact, suppose if the object, so what is the meaning of object, sir? Please come back. So each item, whatever I have, it will be treated as object in the list. But if my object is heavy in content or in size, so it will not store that particular content. Instead of that, it will store the reference, is what they are saying, right? So I will not store the content, it will store the reference of that particular content, what exactly, where exactly we have stored. So that reference will be stored instead of storing that value there. So that is what you need to understand when it comes to the storage. But when it comes to the mutability, lists are mutable. When it comes to string, it is not mutable. What exactly mutable and immutable, sir? We have studied this long back, right? So listen here, I have L. So I have 1, 2, 3. So this is what I will call it as list. So again, I'll take one more example. A is equal to hello. Okay. So how exactly it looks in the memory representation? Hello will look like this. H-E-L-L-O, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is how it looks in the memory, right? So what is the name of the string? A. Variable is A. Fine. How do I represent this list? So same way. Memory representation is same. So 1, 2, 3. So index is 0, 1, 2. Right? Suppose if I want to change H. So if I want to access this H, what is that I will do? A of 0. So what is this A? So A is a name of the string, right? So 0 is the index of this particular location. What is that I have? I have H, right? Suppose if I write like this I, so what is the meaning of it? This content will be stored in this particular place. So that is, I should replace H with I. Is it possible? No, this is not possible when it comes to the concept of strings. So this is what I will call it as immutable. But when it comes to the list, right? So what is the name of the list? L. So L of 0 is equal to 10. So this 10 will be stored in this location. So I have 1. So I will have 10, right? So this is possible in the list. So this is what I will call it as mutable. This is what I will call it as mutable, is what you need to understand, right? So moving on to the next one, accessing the individual elements, which I've already discussed for all of you. Consider the name of the list is ovals, right? If you want to access the first one, so you will be accessing with the help of the index, is what you need to understand, right? Moving forward, traversing a list. How do you access all the elements, whatever you have inside the list? So with the help of the for loop, so we will be able to access all the elements, whatever we have inside the list. So how do we do that? So guys, we have it here. So we use the for loop. So for item in list, for item in list. So for example, I'll be writing something like this. for I in is a keyword that you have to remember. So where I is a variable which traverses through the list, right? For example, I have L, right? So this is a colon that I'm writing. So inside this L, I imagine I have 10, 20, 30, right? So I'll just write print I. So what will happen here? So first time it will come, this I will go to the first location now, right? So what is the I value right now? Right now I value is 10, so it will print. Then after that it will go to the next iteration. So when it goes to the next iteration, it will come to 20. So what is the I value? I value right now it is 20, right? So it will print. Then after that it will go to 30, right? So until it goes to the last end of the list, it will keep on printing. With the help of the for loop, I will be traversing throughout the list is what you need to understand, guys, right? So this is how we will be able to traversing in the sense I will be visiting each and every item that I have inside the list is what you need to understand, right? So moving forward, comparing the list. How do I compare one list to another list is what you need to understand, guys. Standard comparison operators of Python are used to compare. So we use is equal to compare, right? So that's how we compare. So the Python internally compares individual elements of the list lexicographical order. So guys, so that is what you need to understand. For example, each and every value or each and every item, whatever you have, it has got the ASCII values. So based on that ASCII values, the items will be compared. So each and every item will be compared ascending order, right, or in the particular order. So guys, the ASCII values will be compared. So if all the characters, all objects are matching, then only it will return true. Otherwise, it will return false. Is what you need to understand when we are comparing, right? So guys, this is how we compare, right? So L1 is equal to L2. So we are using is equal to. So L1 is a list and L2 is a list is what you need to understand, right? So list operators, we just understood this. So joining operators, I'm just joining two lists. I have list 1 and I have list 2. If I use concatenation will join two lists is what you need to understand. This will help me to join two different lists. So it's all nothing but concatenation operation is what you need to understand, right? So in the same way, I have a replicator operator, which I have already discussed. So it is, please understand. So L list 1. So what is the value that I have in the list 1? So I have 149. So if I perform into 3, so 3 times you have 149, 149, 149. So this is the first time, second time, third time. So this is how you will be multiplying the content. So with the help of this replicator operator, this is what I will call it as a repeating or replicator operator. So guys, next one that I have is slicing the string. What is that I have? Slicing the string. So how do I perform slicing the string? So guys, the syntax remains same. So what is this LST? So LST is the list that I have here. Okay, so this 3 is the starting point that from there exactly I want the list to be sliced, and this is the stop value. This is what I will call it as a stop value. Whatever you want, you can give. So that is what you need to understand. Here you can also have one more thing. So this is the list. So start you can give, stop you can give, and also you can give step, right? So the step is optional. Step is optional. Suppose if I write list, okay, I'll not give the start value, so I'll just give stop value directly. I'll just give the stop value directly. What is the meaning of this? So it should start from beginning. By default, it will start from the beginning, and you will be mentioning the stop value where exactly it should stop. So before that one value it will take. Suppose if you have mentioned 4, so it will take till the index 3 is what you need to understand, right? So suppose if I have written like this, right, 2, and I have not mentioned the stop value, right? So what is the meaning of it? It should start from 2, but it should take the, it should consider till the end of the list. So this is how we perform slicing in list. This is how we perform slicing in list. Let's take an example and understand this in detail, right? So I have the list something like this, or 10, 20, 30, 40. So this is how I have, right? So if I perform, I'll not mention this. So what is the output for this? So imagine the index of this is something like this, right? So I should start from where? So I should start from index 2. So index 2 is here, right? So my output of this will be 30, 40. Because I have to consider till the end, right? That's what you need to understand. Suppose if I write like this, let's imagine instead of 2, I'll just write 1 and 2. Can I write like this? Okay, let me just write 0. So, okay, 0 to 2. So guys, I should start from beginning. I should consider from beginning 2 in the sense. So this is second index. My index is 2. So previous to that, I should take. So this should be the output. When I am considering the stop value as 2, so previous to that value, I should take. That is what you need to understand whenever I'm performing the slicing. This is all about the slicing. So guys, please understand whatever I have done. Please practice this concepts by executing the program. So I will be executing all these programs when it comes to the lab part. So don't worry. So go through this session again and again and understand and share this video with all your friends. Like if you have liked it. Thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Love you all.